East German border controls were intensified. Undetected by Western intelligence, Khrushchev and Ulbricht were planning harsher measures.
Sometime later, a reply came back from Moscow. But Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev agrees to the closing of the border with West Germany and with West Berlin, and suggests the necessary preparations should be carried out.
The National People's Army, the People's Police, the Customs State Security, the Transport Authority were all brought together in the Berlin area. They were put under strict observation, and they were not allowed to telephone their families. They didn't even have a telephone. For 4 to 6 weeks, they worked in total isolation on the preparations.
On August the 12th, Soviet and East German forces were mobilized.
At 23 hours, we were given our orders and told that at 24 hours, the border with West Berlin would be closed by military force. All the soldiers were fully armed. The People's Militia had automatic pistols and machine guns, any weapons they could get hold of.
By early morning, East German troops were ready, lined up in battle order along the sector border. It was Berlin's last hour as one city. On the morning of Sunday, August 13th, Berliners woke to find a divided city. Teams of workers under armed guard started erecting a barbed wire barrier through the center.
Khrushchev, preparing to this event, would have done everything to minimize, or rather to prevent, any military conflict between us and the United States and Western countries. Specifically, Ulbricht was told by Khrushchev 2 days before this what was happening, that he, Ulbricht, could build this wall, but he should not infringe even an inch of American and Western rights. So we expect very strong reaction, but we didn't expect any military clash between us.
The barrier split Berlin. Families were torn apart.
My father actually woke me up and said, you know, they closed the border. It was incomprehensible. You know, it was so strange. And then my mother came in crying, and my elder sister, and we were thinking, you know, how do we get my sister back? My sister that summer had stayed with my aunt just outside of East Berlin. So we all took the S-Bahn, and it was an absolute chaos. It was terrible. People crying, shouting. Some were frightened, some were angry. And I just remember I was so frightened. I thought, we never see my sister. She's lost, so to speak.
A pitiful old woman timidly walked up the 3 stairs to one of these trapos and said, when is the next train to West Berlin? Because all these people hadn't heard. The first news was at midnight over the East Berlin radio, and these people came to the station thinking they could go to West Berlin. And I'll never forget the sneering tone in which this trapo said to her, none of that anymore, Grandma, you're all sitting in a mousetrap now.
Die Menschen waren ganz anders, die haben zwar geschimpft auf uns.
The people were swearing at us. We felt we were simply doing our duty, but we were getting scolded from all sides. The West Berliners yelled at us, and the Eastern demonstrators yelled at us. We were standing there in the middle. There was the barbed wire, there were us guards, West Berliners, East Berliners. For a young person, it was terrible.
The anger of West Berliners boiled over. They demonstrated against the division of their city. They could not believe that the Western Allies would allow the barriers to remain. The demonstrations continued, but the West offered little protest. Mayor Willy Brandt tried to calm the crowds. He feared bloodshed if they attacked the barriers. The Allies were unsure how to react. Western rights had not been challenged.
Erstmal waren wir wütend. Dann waren wir enttäuscht.
We were outraged.
Der Bürgermeister hatte nicht mal geschafft,
and also disappointed.
Die Kommandanten dazu zu bewegen.
The mayor didn't manage to persuade the Allied commanders to make even a small protest.
Auszusprechen.
People were not clear what exactly was going on. It was almost 12 hours before it really registered that this was going to be a total sealing of the inner sector borders. Nobody was quite sure what to do about the subject, what exactly was the scope of it. The focus of all of the planners had been on the threat, the possible necessity of having to take military action to block a Soviet move on Berlin. And here suddenly everybody was relieved to find out that the Soviets had found a way to resolve their problem with the refugees in a way that did not affect Allied rights.
For the Allies, the closed border stabilized the tense Berlin situation. It was ordinary Berliners and their families who paid the price. In East Berlin, one soldier saw his last chance to escape.
Dann war die 14 Uhr, habe ich meine Gruppe eingeteilt.
At 2 o'clock, I assigned tasks to my soldiers. I was in front and I spread the others out so that it wouldn't look suspicious. Nobody noticed anything. From 2 until 4 o'clock, I was thinking about the situation and wondering what was the right decision. I would have to leave my parents and my sister. Finally, I took the decision. I jumped over the barbed wire at 4 o'clock. Then I was in the West, and they received me with a great cheer. I was the first.
Three days later, concrete blocks began to replace the barbed wire. Along the sector boundaries rose the Berlin Wall, carving the city in two. In West Berlin, morale was low. Confidence in Allied protection crumbled. In the east, people risked death to flee through the last chinks in the barrier.
All of a sudden, I saw my friend running, and I said to myself, "Oh my God, you're not going to make it." And I couldn't run. I turned into a pillar of salt. And an elderly woman said to me, "Go girl, run too. You're still young, run." So I just started running. My friend had hurt her face, but I'd only ripped my sweater. Apart from that, I wasn't hurt. We were incredibly happy. We laughed and cried. We'd just made it.
Many more made an impulsive dive for freedom.
One day he didn't return home. I was waiting and waiting. He didn't come during the night or the next day, and I thought, what has happened? And then my brother-in-law came. Don't you know, he said, he's in the West. My whole world collapsed. I had to collect his things from work. It was like collecting the belongings of a dead person.
Later, Heinz Karstens helped his wife to escape.